All right, hello everybody, and welcome to what we're going to call week three of our EDMA 637 Lakeville edition. Just want to start this week with a little bit of a timeline view. After this week, you will be halfway done with this course, and after that, you only have one course left. So if that doesn't put a little smile on your face, I don't know what can. So congratulations. Keep fighting through this. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and as we move through, just really look back at your accomplishments because I think you have a lot to be proud of. So keep that in front of you. I want to thank you this week for your work on, or last week, I guess, for your work on digital citizenship. Just a couple thoughts on that. First of all, it's really important that we teach that material, but we don't necessarily over teach it. And I want you to think of it this way: like, I remember a long time ago when we first got pencils in our hand, we didn't over teach the idea that we shouldn't take that pencil and stab someone else in the eye with it, right? We simply said this is a tool and we need to make sure that we use it well. So, I'm thinking about, once a year or once each term, just dropping a little bit of information on your students that allows for a kind of them to remember the importance of this. There's probably a little bit bigger danger zone with our middle school and high school kids on this topic, really considering the concept of their digital footprint. With primary students, it's a little bit more about safety and just really understanding where the risk can be. But don't overteach, just remind. So what we're going to have you do on this one is you'll see a link to everybody's projects on this. And there are 4 projects. I'm going to ask you to review and comment on the 3 of them that are not yours. So take a peek at all of those if you would. This week's weekly technology spotlight will come from Crystal and Amy sometime on Wednesday evening. I'll probably post Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. Last week, we had some great weekly technology spotlights from Richard and Amanda. I really like Richard's focusing on first 2 things. One, the breakout room, and the kind of the challenges that go with that, but also the greatness. And then he talked about 24/7 accessibility with computers and technology. And I think this is important understanding. This kind of crosses into assessment 5, which is our websites, and how does that play into the ability to to really give students a constant tool and resource, not just for students, but also for parents as well. Amanda talked about taking the classroom outside and into nature, and I think that's a really cool idea. I was really impressed with the iNaturalist site because it really worked on this thing we call global connections, which is a real clean part of assessment 4, which we'll do this week. And I just want to make sure you kind of see that concept of how do we take our classroom and move it outside of the room type of thing. This week there's a resource on iPads. It's a great tool, wonderful tool. Creativity, it can really push SAMR with really young kids. On the material for this week on iPads, there's no formal grading. It's more of a resource. I have it broken down into 3 kind of grade band pieces with primary, middle kind of level, and then high school. For those of you that use iPads a lot, take a peek at this. For those of you that don't use iPads, if you want to take a look at your grade band just to see what's available, it might be a tool to buy in small pieces for your classrooms with school budgets and things like that. But it's just for review, no assignment. I want to talk briefly about your Google Sites Assessment 5. First of all, it's been kind of fun to look at what you guys have created, some of the things that you're doing with your websites already, which is great. I had a great conversation with Danielle on Wednesday night about just kind of where your school system is on this and like how it could be hold you back just a bit. And so don't push that too hard within your system. But if you don't get a lot of pushback, it's again a great tool. I want you to think of your websites as a parent resource. We're going to talk a little bit about how a blog could work into your website, and how you can really share ideas about your websites throughout this. And so take a peek at each other's websites once I give you that opportunity. We're also going to look at creating a blog this week, and I think this is a really kind of a cool piece. It's a great literacy tool. Now, I think a lot of teachers would say, well, the blog, what do you want me to do this? Well, we'll start that way, and it's a neat idea. But then from there, if you want to take this into your classroom with a blog, and I know some of you that are using Seesaw have explored the Seesaw blog, which is kind of neat. Blogs can be pictorial, and I think at the primary level, we would maybe use them a little bit more pictorial, or they can be stories. I've also heard from teachers that actually allow students to type in their teacher blog and to share their own ideas. And what a powerful way for students to use their teacher to share ideas. I think that's great. I'm going to introduce a blogging site called Blogger. The reason I like Blogger is because it's seamless with Google, and it works really well with Google Sites. So if it's something that you might want to play with, I think it's a good idea. Um, you'll notice I'm going to share a blog with you this week that's mine, and I don't use Blogger only because I started long before we were kind of in Blogger. I use something called WordPress. Now, I don't use my blog weekly. I don't post weekly. I probably have, if you would search back through my blog, 15 to 20 posts total in the last 5 years or so. So it's not something I use all the time. And I kick around ideas about how to use this with students, and I haven't come to a quick, clear idea, but it's something I'm still working on. For those of you that use the reference I used last week with George Couros and his blog, again, George Couros, great blog. 1 minute reads, very, very simple. He'll send you 2 to 3 a week. And again, I would encourage you to take a peek at some of those because they're so great about technology and innovation. HyperDoc, our HyperDoc assessment, which is assessment 6. I want you to kind of just keep this in your brain. It's not necessarily due this week, but something just to think about. This isn't just a single lesson. This is more of a unit or a longer drawn out type of project-based assignment. It's a great resource for students and parents. I always think of it this way, that if you sent an assignment home and a parent wanted to help their child with the assignment, what resources does the parent have to help? And so HyperDocs build in those resources. And that's a cool thing because it gives parents an opportunity to be part of the process. And I know you've heard that from me a couple of times with the website and the HyperDoc. I want to see that parent interaction piece because as a parent, that's really helpful for me when I want to support my students. And if I say I don't know how to help, this gives me a perfect tool to allow me to do that. It also sets a whole bunch of support structures that you can use even in the classroom and let kids kind of go with this, okay? So you can kind of sit back just a little bit and see how students move, what students might need more of your attention, and what students can kind of fly on their own. For the primary level, HyperDocs are great because they give you a tool to stand in front of your classroom and teach from, which I think is a really cool tool. And many of you have similar things with your curriculums, but this is something that you're going to create on your own. All right, so this week's assessments, we're going to do 2 of them. Assessment 3 and 4. Now it seems like a lot, but I want you to know that they're both relatively simple in concept, and what you put out in this is just kind of just your observations and thoughts. Assessment 3 is about a game or activity that you currently use in your classroom, but what we're connecting it back to is the SAMR model. And you guys have been great at referencing this throughout the process. This last week's weekly technology spotlights from Amanda, each one of hers, she kind of brought into that SAMR model. So I think you're thinking about this a lot. Please know that whatever game or activity you share, there's no judgment on the SAMR level, so pick whatever. It's just more you recognizing it, and then maybe thinking about how could you add to this to increase or take your students up a little further. Now, to answer assessment 3, you're actually going to answer this in my blog because it does require you posting in an online platform, online post. When you do this, you'll see my blog with the assessment 3, and you're going to put your answer in my comment line. Now, in order to get there, you have to scroll down. Okay, you got to scroll down quite a bit. Why? Because I think there's 50 other students that have put their ideas around technology and a game or activity they use in their classroom in the SAMR level. So as you scroll, if you have a minute, just take a look at some other ideas. There's lots of great ideas in there from other teachers about how you would do this effectively. So consider that. So pretty straightforward. You're just typing, evaluating the SAMR level, and then I'll give you some feedback on that when you're done. Assessment 4 this week as well is on global connections. And this is a great place for you to brainstorm with your team at your school how you think you could do this. Okay, I'm a health educator, right? So one of my global connections is to connect with some doctors in like the Mayo system, other places like that, where they could actually come into my classroom and work with my students digitally or virtually. I think the goal in Global Connections is how do you take your classroom out of your classroom without leaving your classroom? And that seems a little crazy, but it really does. We can do this now, and it doesn't have to be just in the United States. We can start in our community. We can lead out to our state. We can go out in our country, and potentially you could go further than that. I'm going to introduce a site called ePals. I think many of you remember the olden days where we actually had pen pals and we hand pencil out letters to them. ePals is a very similar thing, but it uses technology and you can send all over the world. When you click into ePals, if you create an account, you'll see lots of other places that you can send to teachers that are looking for exactly that same thing, a connection with somebody from across the world. Looks really, really fun to me. You can also work your global connections through Twitter um, and just come up with other ideas there. And you can do this through Google Meet, or you can, whatever you choose to make your vehicle to connect, that's your decision 100%. As far as how do you report on assessment 4, there's a Google Doc that will be placed in Google Classroom and simply type up what you could do. It's not necessarily what you're already doing, or I'm not asking you to do it right now. You might want to think about this for next year. What could you do? Okay, so again, don't panic on this that you're creating something, you have to do it right now. It's more just a brainstorming session. What's in the future that you could do this in a global sense? What could you do with your students to connect to others around your extended community or further out? Okay. I am going to have there's a quick piece in here on learning management systems, and I'm just going to ask you to pick one that you think might be best. Okay, so some of you are using Seesaw, that's a learning management system. I know a couple schools are using Schoology, another learning management system. So just pick one, and then you're going to do the pros and cons of that learning management system. Okay. As far as where you put this, you're going to put it in your blog. Okay. So learning management system review in your blog. And then I'm going to ask you to put your blog into your website, but you'll share your blog address with our group as well, so we can take a look at that. And then you can decide from this point on what you want to add to your blog if that's something that you would continue down the road. I want to talk real quick about professional learning networks. I think this is a really powerful piece. And I brought in Twitter at the beginning. I've kind of reminded you about Twitter, and I've continued to add things to our hashtag EDMA637LK Twitter hashtag. Quick story on this. We had a teacher here where I work who is now retired, kindergarten teacher. And she got into Twitter actually through a book study work that she and I did together. Started some Twitter things about a year and a half before she retired. She lived in the hashtag KinderChat, and this was her new curriculum tool. And she started going back and forth with people in KinderChat, hashtag KinderChat. And one of the things she told me right before she retired was that she maybe doesn't want to retire anymore because she really likes all the new ideas she's getting from that. So those of you that have jumped into Twitter, give this a try. Again, this is not an assignment. I'm not grading this. But if you find a couple things, if you could share them back and use our EDMA 637 LK hashtag, that would be awesome because I love to see you kind of digging and sharing ideas, and that's kind of another purpose of the class. Those of you that jumped into that Seesaw lesson that I put together, again, that was more exploratory, but I thank you for playing with it. I think we all know that Seesaw is really focusing in on a little bit more primary stuff, but to Danielle and Richard, who have the upper level kids, if you go into Seesaw's library, there's actually a whole bunch of tools and activities for older students as well. So thank you for playing with that again. That was not necessarily required, but just the opportunity to see that from the student side. All right, lastly, every now and then I think sometimes at this point you're feeling a little overwhelmed. a little burdened with your school obligations, probably going back, some of you back to a full in person or a hybrid setting. I want to remind you that I am flexible with assignments. Just reach out if there's something that's hanging on you, or you're frustrated with the process along the way. Just reach out. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out the best way to manage this. Again, I want to thank you for your work, your promptness, your professionalism, uh, getting stuff in. Some of you are getting stuff in really early. I know there was two of the projects for cyber safety were done, I think, by Thursday. That's incredible, and thank you for doing that. It's great to see those things. But again, use your time how you need it, okay, for the week. Again, we have 3.5 weeks left. That's it. And I just want to make sure you know that you're doing great work, and I appreciate everything you do. Lastly, as we ended last week, I'll end this week again. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay well. You know, use what your district has for your PPE to keep you safe, your family safe, all those things, and also take care of you, take care of your mental health as well. So do what you can. We'll do office hours again, 7:30 to 9 on Wednesday. And again, if you just want to come in and chat, that's fine. If you have questions, that's fine. I appreciate the conversations I've had each week with a couple of you on different topics related to not only the class, but just how things are going in your classroom. So again, I appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you, thank you for your work. And I look forward to our work this week in assessments 3 and 4, and a little bit on learning management systems as well. So take care, everybody, and have a great week.